Okay, this video is Chapter 8 about obesity and fat from the book about Dr. John McDougall, The Doctor Who Fought for You, written by me, Pete Rogers. He referred to the losing weight as the Battle of the Bulge, like a reminder of the Germans at near the end of World War II, around France there in Belgium. Okay, so the struggle to control one's weight, the Battle of the Bulge. And this is also from Dr. McDougall's newsletter, February 2006, where he says moderation is impossible for passionate people. Okay, he says, have you ever seen a smoker quit by cutting down? I haven't. Have you ever heard of an alcoholic who sobered up by switching to beer? I haven't. The only effective means to overcome these destructive habits is to remove the powerful substance from the person's life. Extreme change returns tremendous rewards. Eating the low-fat vegan diet, a person loses weight faster and it's sustainable. That's why, yeah, a big change is better than a small one, because with a big change you get the results. Otherwise, a small one, you're like, why bother? Okay, McDougall continues. Throughout my entire life, I have been enthusiastic about everything. I was born this way. So now, even if I wanted to, I could not become a moderate person. So I have found the solution. I now direct my energy towards supportive, not destructive behaviors. I have learned to love healthy foods. Irish poet and dramatist Oscar Wilde said, moderation is a fatal thing. Nothing succeeds like excess. Okay, so yeah, there's the bottom line. Do the stuff that's good for you, avoid the stuff that's bad for you, and go 100% on it. And then I've said this before too. Average social thinking is sort of like, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, everything in moderation. The herd animal physiology for digesting food. We also tend to think like herd animals, but that doesn't work for health. For health, you want to think biblical. Thou shalt not eat meat. Thou shalt not eat oils, because that works. Lots of people, you don't understand, as you get older, you get more fragile. And if you don't really get your act together, you're screwed. I can tell you, almost everybody I see, late 50s, 60s and up, they're fat, sick, and stupid. That's not just patients. That's most of the doctors I know over 60, okay? They're fat, they're sick, they're kind of a little mentally slow. You don't want to end up like that. And the only way you're not going to end up like that is you got to make a dramatic effort, different than the average person. Okay, but Dr. McDougall continues. Health is attractive. Men and women want to mate with the healthiest person possible. Good health suggests the parent will be around longer and able to provide a safe shelter and adequate food for the children. Good health predicts longevity. Testosterone is 13% higher in male vegans than in meat eaters. Men who consume meat and dairy are more likely to become impotent earlier in life. The obesity tissue has more aromatase enzyme making estrogens. Plus, you got more atherosclerosis plugging up the arteries to the Johnson. The pudendal arteries to the Johnson are only 1.5 millimeters in diameter. Pretty small, easy to plug that up with atherosclerosis. Okay, low-fat diets lead to better blood flow, to better tissue oxygenation, and this gives the skin a glow of vitality. That is attractive. Okay, a healthy-looking person looks attractive. That's why all these athletes, like these Olympic athletes, why they're so attractive. They just radiate health and vitality. Low-fat vegan diet also reduces the risk of acne. They make you better looking. Animal protein has more sulfur-containing amino acids like methionine and cysteine. These lead to bad breath, which is called halitosis. Also, the sulfur gets into the blood. You exhale it, so it's going to give you bad breath. There's nothing you could do except stop eating that stuff. That's another reason why Dr. McDougall sometimes jokes about eggs. He says people think eggs are a healthy food. They're a terrible food. Eggs are what you feed to animals to cause atherosclerosis, and they got tons of sulfur in them, giving you bad breath, make you smell bad. Okay, for this chapter, I watched the videos about obesity and dietary fat at the Dr. McDougall YouTube channel. By the way, I usually put the video titles and the newsletter titles in blue ink, so you'll set them apart. Okay, here's Dr. McDougall continuing. The fat you eat is the fat you wear. It goes from the lips to the hips. The primary purpose of fat is for storage, for the day when you have no food. It moves so effortlessly from your gut to your body that I can tell what type of fat you eat with a biopsy needle. I can biopsy your buttocks, and the type of fat will match what you eat. Yeah, fat is just readily absorbed and bulk. That's different than, let's say, a protein. A protein has to be broken up into its individual amino acids, okay? Okay, saturated fat and cholesterol are euphemisms for animal foods. And they did that when they told people about what you should reduce. Say reduce saturated fat. They're not going to come out and say reduce animal foods. The corporations that make them and promote them, they're not going to allow that. They're going to lobby and negotiate to make sure that's not said. But that's what it's meant when it says reduce saturated fat and cholesterol. It means reduce animal foods. Complex carbohydrates is a euphemism for starch. When you say complex carbohydrate, people tend to not know what you're talking about. You say starch, and they're more likely to know what you're talking about. Starch is a Germanic root word for something meaning strong or stiff, to strengthen and stiffen, which you get the idea of starching your ironing, but it also means with food, polymer of glucose wrapped in fiber, okay? So Dr. McDougall emphasizes it's better to call starch foods what they are, which means call them starches. People know what starches are, and he says, at least my grandmother knew what starches were. When we were going to visit Grandma, she would say, what starch will you be having for dinner? Almost no one knows what a complex carbohydrate is. How would an average person respond if you asked them, what complex carbohydrates do you like? Omega-3 fats increase the risk of bleeding. The omega-3 fats also suppress the immune system. They make you less able to fight an infection or cancer. Omega-6 fats and oils are even more toxic to the artery than a saturated fat. I would say about omega-3 fats, they don't cause much of a change in bleeding. I was an imaging-guided surgeon before I became a neuroradiologist, and I did many thousands of procedures, and I can tell you, I never once had a bleeding problem from people on omega-3 fats. I never once even saw significant abnormal bleeding. Let's say I'm putting in a portacath or something. It was really a non-issue. Aspirin also was a non-issue. I never had a bleed from aspirin. I can tell you those other drugs like Plavix, that's a big deal. Okay, apixaban, that's a big deal. But never with omega-3s or aspirin. Okay, the two essential fats are omega-3 and omega-6. Both are only made by plants. Fish do not make omega-3 fats. They simply lengthen the fats that they get from algae. The fish get them from eating algae and seaweed. All free oils, and by the way, a lot of people ask me if I like algae and seaweed, and my answer is no, I don't, because almost everything in the ocean and the lakes, unfortunately, we use them as a sewer, so they're full of toxic chemical contaminants. There's some algae that can make domoic acid, which is a really powerful excitotoxin, so I would never eat that stuff. I know a lot of people think that that's a good thing. And maybe there is a way to make it less bad, but, again, like the Goldhammer quote, just because something's less bad doesn't mean it's good. I don't see a need to pursue those things. Okay, Dr. McDougall continues. All free oils are highly processed foods and should be considered drugs, not foods. All drugs have adverse side effects. Oil is 9 calories per gram. That's the highest possible caloric density. Starch is only 1 calorie per gram. So oil is 9 times more caloric density than starch. That's telling you something. That's why the oils are so bad. That's one of the many reasons. Free oils are added to processed foods to get stuff to stick to them, to stick all the junk together. When you put oil on French fries, it gets the salt to stick to the French fries. You put oil on a donut, it gets the sugar to stick to it. These free oils are toxic, and they cause increased risk of cancer. They also are atherogenic, hypoxic, and they increase your risk of dementia. Natural plant foods do contain small amounts of oil, but they are not free. They're part of the food stuff. They're okay, the tiny amounts you get in low-fat plant foods. These small amounts of oil are packaged inside the plant in a way that protects them and you. They don't go rancid. They don't undergo lipid peroxidation right away like a processed oil does. It's already lipid peroxidized partially as soon as you open up. Okay, a starch-based diet has all the fats you need, including omega-3, and they're in the proper amount, in the proper environment, basically the proper packaging, so the fat is not toxic, unlike it is when it comes in a bottle. Okay, this is John McDougall, and this was from one of his lectures, Is There Such a Thing as Healthy Fats, and from the Potato Mastermind lecture. Okay, so that's where we're going to stop for today. We'll do this in a couple parts because it's a long chapter. I hope that was helpful.